Just
Even
us.
good name,
Okay.
yeah. It's my pleasure to introduce and welcome Dr. Veronica Porter. Dr. Porter's been a longtime faculty member at Northeastern and a co-op coordinator as well. So as someone who is entering this field, I would love the opportunity to ask you a few questions about your career path.
Okay, thank you.
So you are one of the few that have pursued a PhD in your role. Can you tell me why you made that decision and how it's contributed to your career?
Sure. When I first became a co-op coordinator, the position was a tenured faculty position. And so I spent, the first several years really learning the job. I received tenure without having my PhD, but, felt that, because I did have tenure, that I should have the same type of academic background as my colleagues who are faculty members at universities. So I decided to, I received tenure, but not a promotion to associate professor because I did not have the advanced degree. I think the university decided to make a commitment to me because I had done a fair amount of research and I had developed some national programming, particularly around co-op and students with disabilities. So they wanted to retain me, but I at that point decided that I wanted to go on and get my PhD. So I did, and though it was a lot of work, working full time and having some kind of family life and doing my doctoral work, I really felt that it gave me a whole other set of skills that I really wanted to hone in on, and that was the ability to do research, the ability to use SPSS and be able to analyze data, etc. I chose to do my work in more of an economic type of function in terms of the theoretical approach that I used was the theory of human capital. That was also something that was outside my scope of experience, and that was also very interesting. The person who chaired my committee was an economist, and so that was kind of a whole new language and a whole new field that I needed to learn, and I thought that was very interesting and also very applicable to my day-to-day work, which has to do with placing students on co-op and doing employer development. So having a knowledge and understanding of the labor market, is really helpful. So it did kind of circle back to my day-to-day work. So over that time, I feel that it's opened up some additional doors for me in terms of collaborating with, other people who have similar research interests. Kind of gave me a different perspective on looking at my work in terms of, how to assess it and look at it from more of a research perspective.
Given that you work with a lot of biology students now, do you feel that based on your work and being highly involved in research that you're better equipped to answer students' questions about being in a research environment and especially if it's a more academic research environment?
I think it certainly gives me a perspective on why research is important in any field. I guess to some degree that would be the case. My work was in law, policy, and society, and my research is very different from what a science student would do in terms of research. But I certainly think that it helped me understand the benefit and how to apply research to my day-to-day work.
And you mentioned that you did a lot of work with co-op and students with disabilities. So how has now that's something you've continued to date and worked with both students and employers to improve that environment. So how has what has progress look like for that? How are students or employers acting differently based on accommodating students' disabilities?
Okay, let me backtrack just a little bit to tell you how I got interested in that part of the field. I actually have my bachelor's degree is in speech pathology and audiology, because I initially thought that I wanted to work with deaf students. And then after doing my student teaching and actually I attended Northeastern as an undergrad, one of my co-ops was at Boston School for the Deaf. And while I really enjoyed the experience and I enjoyed my student teaching, I realized at that point that career-wise, the rubella epidemic had come and gone, and there weren't a lot of opportunities for teachers of deaf children. So I kind of did an analysis on some of my other co-op experiences, which included a business co-op because I had decided that I had never worked in an office, so I'd like to develop some administrative skills, so I was able to do that. And then my last three co-ops were actually on campus working in the admissions department with new students coming in. And I realized that I really enjoyed that aspect of things. I really enjoyed working when I analyzed all of my different jobs and you know which experiences I felt the most energized about. I realized that that's the age group that I really enjoyed working with, and that I liked that type of work. One of my mentors, who was one of the previous presidents of Northeastern, Jack Curry, happened to be the dean of admissions at the time. And when I spoke with him about what I was thinking, he said, "Well, you gotta leave this place and go do something else for a couple of years, and then think about it. And if you decide that that's what you want to do at that point, apply to return," which is what I did. So I luckily was able to get a position again, being at a social function and just doing some networking. It was a position as an administrative coordinator for a clinic for developmentally delayed children. It operated as a second opinion core evaluation team, and they needed someone to coordinate the intakes and the evaluations of the children. It was made up of part-time professionals, and so the person who was the coordinator was the only full-time person, and who did the initial intake and then set up and guided the process through to the end, and actually sent the reports to the schools, etc. So I very luckily happened to get that job, and that my time there gave me the opportunity to really explore all the different aspects of special ed. I worked with psychologists, social workers, speech therapists, pediatricians, and got a really good sense of kind of, do I want a career in this field, in a special ed setting, either in speech or some other area, or, do I want to do something else? So while I was there, the speech therapist used to supervise Northeastern students, and he would get waivers, class tuition waivers for his work. And so he came into my office one day and said, I keep getting these waivers for free courses. I'm never taking another course. He was pretty close to retirement, so he kind of tossed them on my desk and said, "Here, do you want to take a couple of courses?" And I thought this would be great, so I looked at some different programs, and I decided to be a special student in the college student development program at that time. I realized as I did my assessment that the things that I liked most even about the speech path work that I did was kind of the more counseling aspect of things. So I came back and did the courses and became very excited about that as a career, and then decided to do my master's in that work, and there happened to be an entry-level counseling position available in the co-op department, and so I started that, and then did my master's part-time. While I was in that position, a deaf student walked into my office. I was working in the business area as an entry-level counselor, and it kind of rekindled my interest in students with disabilities. So she and I worked very closely together on co-op issues. Excuse me. And so I went over to the Disability Resource Center to find out kind of what was going on in terms of students with disabilities in co-op, and discovered that there were some real issues. That students were actually kind of getting co-op waived because of their disabilities, which was not a good thing, because they were not getting the experience that they needed to be able to get out into the world of work when they graduated. So there was a faculty member in co-op who was assigned to be the liaison with that office, and I came back and spoke with her about helping her with whatever she needed to have done, and she said, I was just assigned this task. I'm really not very interested in it, so if you would like to do it, let's talk to the dean and get it reassigned to you. And that's kind of how my my relationship with the Disability Resource Center was started. And so I feel that my background kind of came full circle, that I had the interest in, working with students with disabilities from a speech pathology standpoint, had taken a lot of courses in special ed and such, and then was able to really apply it, with my college student development and co-op background. So a lot has happened since then. Those students, I started working directly with students and co-op coordinators, providing training for the co-op faculty to make sure that they understood that students should not be waiving out of co-op. And so working with the Disability Resource Center, we started offering trainings to co-op faculty, to co-op employers, and did some direct work with students to help get the ball rolling so that students could have access to the co-op program, and we're making these career choices that hopefully would help them in the future. Since that time, I think that the legislation obviously has changed with the 503, 504 regulations and the ADA. But despite all of that, the people with disabilities still are the most unemployed and underemployed, probably minority group in the country today. So it still has not, there's a big discrepancy in people with disabilities having attachment to the labor force. So we still have a lot of work to do. I feel very lucky here at Northeastern that we have a great relationship with the Disability Resource Center and Career Services and Co-op, and that we've developed a model for working with students that has been pretty successful, and that provides a comprehensive kind of wraparound support to students with disabilities who need the extra help in navigating the system. So that's a very long answer to a short question.
Well, I appreciate hearing the background because it makes perfect sense how everything came full circle, and
Exactly.
you can't. You're better at being a liaison for those students when you have the passion and everything came together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's perfect. And you also mentioned that you had Jack Harry as your mentor. So I'm curious if there's any words of wisdom that still ring in your ears that you've kind of lived by or has contributed to your success.
From Jack Harry?
Yes.
Well, I think he led by example. And when I first met him, he was Dean of Admissions, and I was the co-op in admissions, which is how we met. And I think what always impressed me is that he was always passionate about English and writing. And even though he was Dean of Admissions, he always taught, part-time in the evening school, a writing or an English course. And, as he went on and, completed his presidency, he then became an author and wrote several books. And but he always had this passion for, writing and teaching. And I think he had started out as a teacher, and that I think carried through all of his, his tenure as president. And I think that having, being passionate about your work as kind of the underlying pinnings of what you're doing, to me that was a really great example.
How important do you think it is to have a mentor in the early stages of your career or throughout your career?
I think it's really important, and I've been very fortunate in that. Jack was a mentor to some degree, but when I started my work, when I became a co-op coordinator, I had been here for a few years, and I had, met many people who already were co-op coordinators, and you never know who's going to be a likely or unlikely mentor. And there was one person in the business school who had been here for many years, and he was the marketing co-op coordinator. So I was going to be working with allied health and science students. He was in marketing, but he worked with many of the large pharmaceutical companies and oil companies, et cetera. And he just took me under his wing and said, I'm going to take you to New York and New Jersey. That's where all these companies are. He picked me up, and we went on a few day trip, and I really got to watch him in action and realize, why employer development work was so important to create these opportunities for our students, and the kind of relationship that he had developed over time with many of his employers. And that was a really great example to me of, a really big, important part of what we do is developing and maintaining those relationships with employers so that we can develop these opportunities for our students. So he was a really good mentor to me. And then at the time we had a formal mentoring system. So, one of the engineering coordinators became my, big brother or whatever they were calling it then. And he, I actually had selected him. We could request a mentor, and I selected him because I felt that I had worked in the business area for a few years, and I had some informal mentors in business. I was working in the allied health area and shared a floor with the arts and sciences people, so I kind of felt like I got to know them. But I really didn't know the engineers. And at that time, we were all together in one building on different floors, and I felt that that would be a good perspective, for me to really kind of understand what was going on in engineering. And this was someone, again, had been there for a very long time, had, kind of specific ways that he did things, but a lot of good advice to offer. And I felt that, there was always someone that I could learn from, whether the person had been here for, 40 years or whether the person had been here for, 2 or 3 years. So, I think mentoring takes place in different ways, and, having an open mind to, really be able to receive kind of someone's wisdom and someone's creativity, has always been very helpful to me.
And it seems like now with the job market coming out of the recession a few years ago, that it seems that the job placement is a very hot topic in colleges, and Northeastern has been very successful in job placement in part due to the co-op program. So it seems like a lot more colleges are getting more involved with co-op. How do you see that competition affecting Northeastern?
I think it may be affecting it, a little bit, but I think because we are on a year-round program and our program is 6 months at a time, and it's so well established that I think we have, a name for ourselves, so to speak. But I think we can offer employers a kind of continuity that other places can't. We also, I think, one of the strengths that our employers continually cite is how well prepared our students are. So I think we, but by the preparation that we do with them and the fact that they're available for, 6 months on a full-time basis, and that we are maintaining these relationships with our employers, in the Boston area anyway, I don't think that we have been adversely affected to a great degree.
And as someone who's been involved with many different professional associations, which do you feel have been the most valuable to you?
Well, I'm a long-standing member of the Cooperative Education and Internship Association. At the beginning of my career, I think that organization was very helpful to me because it was the only place where people really understood what co-op was. There were a lot of other places that did internships, but, it was different from what co-op is. And so, learning, and again, I was very lucky to have some mentors from, other schools that, that were very helpful. And, for example, the director of co-op and the associate director of co-op at Gallaudet University, which is a school for the deaf in Washington, became mentors of mine. And they had invited me down several times. I did some collaboration with them, learned a lot about working with students with disabilities in co-op from them, which was very, very, fortunate for me. Meeting people from other, large co-op schools and kind of seeing how, that this process works in a lot of different ways. Understanding what the differences are between our program and other programs. But, hearing what the topics are and how people do things and getting fresh ideas. So I'd have to say that was kind of a main association. The other association I've been pretty involved in is the Association on Higher Education and Disability. And that's the group that works primarily with students with disabilities. Most of the people in that organization are directors of disabled student offices and that type of thing. But there's a group of people who are interested in careers, and their background is in career counseling or co-op and internship. So that's been a place where I've been able to learn a lot as well.
What I think is really interesting what you said was the camaraderie, which is so nice to hear, considering there's it can be competitive
Mhm.
between colleges and attracting students, and especially that have similar programs. But it seems like that you had a lot of camaraderie with those who were in these different associations and really helping each other, which is always wonderful to hear. Um, so, given this long career you had and the success that you've been able to achieve, um, where where do you see yourself going next? What's on your to-do list to accomplish?
I think that there's always more to learn and more to grow, and I really consider myself a lifelong learner. When I first started at Northeastern, one of the first people I met was the chemical engineering coordinator, a guy named Chuck Field, and I remember him saying to me, I've been doing the same job for 40 years, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I think I would like die of boredom if I did the same job for 40 years. Well, my job has changed so much over, my career. I've been very fortunate. I think one of the benefits of being at a university is that, and also being a faculty member at a university is that there's lots of room to grow and to try new things and to, do different things. I mean, I've been very fortunate in that I've had several grants to be able to look at, assessment of student learning, factors affecting the participation of students with disabilities on co-op, um, kind of enhancing the reflection, portion of the program, et cetera. So I've really, and I've gotten the opportunity to collaborate with other people in just about every college on campus. I've been very involved in, other aspects whenever I get a chance to do that. So I think that there's always things to learn and, new ways to do things. Certainly with technology, that's really kind of opened up some doors, et cetera. I think for me, one of the things that I'm really interested in doing is more strategic planning, which, I've done in the past. I was group leader for the arts and sciences co-op faculty when we were all together. There was 17 of us for 3 or 4 years before I went back and finished my PhD. So I think that doing some strategic planning and particularly around employer development issues is something that I'm really interested in continuing and to doing more of. Um, I kind of enjoy that interfacing of education and the real world out there and making those connections and helping build those programs. So I think that that's what I'm looking at, and also probably teaching. I have gotten the opportunity to to teach both here in my regular job, but also as an adjunct in in an institution, and that is another something that I would like to kind of stretch and continue to do from time to time.
What I liked about what you said when you first answered the question is just being kind of open and being open to the idea of being a lifelong learner. Because you never know what might come your way, because you didn't even know that the Disability Resource Center liaison position existed until you started investigating further, and then you took that on as an opportunity. So that is very valuable advice. So my last question for you is, for someone who is preparing to enter the field, what can they do to make themselves a more qualified candidate to become a co-op coordinator?
Well, one thing I remember when I was a counselor in the department, and I had requested that the dean of co-op, have lunch with me at some point, which people were very surprised about at that point because he was kind of, someone who some people found very intimidating. But I thought, what, if I want a career in this field, I really should talk to, the person who's in charge of this area here at the university. And I remember going to him and saying, inviting him to lunch and, having lunch with him and asking him that very same question. And his first response to me was, "You must have been a very weird kid, because when your peers were in the sandbox with you, playing, saying, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a this,' you were saying, I want to be a co-op coordinator." And that probably wasn't too far from the truth. That very early on, I knew that I wanted a career in this field. I just found the field so exciting, and that just having the opportunity to get into the world of work as a student and try things out. Certainly, first of all, in my own co-op career, proved very valuable as I was making my decisions down the road, that I had actual experiences, work experiences to compare and contrast and make decisions about. So when I asked him that question, he said, "Well, you got to be visible." So I took that as making sure that that I got involved with things, and that I was able to to let people know that I was interested in opportunities. At that time, I was working in the business area, and there was there were at that time, women in business were, kind of struggling in some ways. So I was able to create a women in business group. Someone else had kind of started working with that in a little bit, but ended up leaving the university. And I thought, I think that's a really good thing to continue. So, let me take that and see if I can, kind of create more of a group. And we had guest speakers, every month, and I invited, senior female partners in from some of the big accounting firms and other companies. And so again, looking for opportunities where I could, first of all, that I was really interested in and that I could continue to be very excited about and really passionate about, where I thought I was, making a difference and helping in some way, students more than just doing my regular job, but also then, I actually, try to get funding for some of these things. So it put me in a position where I was able to get some visibility and let people know that I was really interested in, a career in this area. So when I applied for the position, at that time, it was posted in the Boston Globe, so I had to apply as an outside candidate. And I remember the dean saying to me, "Well, I've got 75 resumes, that I got through the Boston Globe. So, if you come up number one in the search, then the job is yours. But if not, don't hold your breath." So I went back and went to at that time, the Career Resource Library, and did research on, all of the majors that I was going to be, that I was applying to work with. It was a position in the allied health area. At that time, it was required that you had an academic background in the field that you were going to be a co-op coordinator in. So my degree was in speech path, which was an allied health degree. And so, I that gave me the ticket to at least apply for the position and at least be considered. So I remember I did 40 pages of research on, all the different fields that I was going to be working with. It was going to be toxicology, med lab science, respiratory therapy, health record administration. And then my first thing was having an interview with the dean, and he'd say, "Well, I don't even know what toxicology is." And I'd say, "Toxicology, the study of injurious chemical substances to living biological organisms." So after a couple of things, he goes, "Okay, I get it. You're prepared. Okay." And that's what he said, if you come up number one, if you don't hold your breath. And I said, "Well, that's fine. I just wanted the opportunity to toss my hat into the ring." Mm-hmm. And so there was a search committee, I had 4 years of experience as, a counselor in the co-op department. So it really was valuable experience. So I was able to answer, any scenario that kind of came up because I had dealt with, most things. And so long story short, I left the office that day, and the conference room where the committee was deliberating had kind of like an open, kind of open blinds, and I could see that they were still there, and it was like 6:30 at night. And I thought, "Oh, this is not good." But in the morning, I found out that, I had been, I had come out as the top candidate, and, after kind of going back through another interview with the dean, was able to, be the successful candidate for the job. But I felt like I worked, I had to work for it. There were a lot of really good candidates, and it was my experience, kind of in co-op, as a co-op counselor that prepared me for, for being able to move into that other type of position.
Well, it's been such a wonderful experience listening to your career path and helping myself and my classmates kind of understand the possibilities and career path opportunities. So thank you very much for your time today. Greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Thank you.